Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Boxing Coalition. My name is Cam. Joining me tonight, Naota. Hope you're well, Naota. It's crazy. We did a show yesterday, doing one today. That's like, I think we've never ever done a back-to-back show, but might trying to get that boxing voice money, start just doing random shows about Amir Khan's divorce or something like
that. Yeah, man, the play-by-play for that one's got to be brutal.
Exactly. But how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Trying to catch up on as many fights as I possibly can in the midst of being as busy as I am nowadays. It's crazy, but I've been getting by.
And to add to that, the fact that you've been busy, there's been an awful amount of fights as well. Like even just this past weekend, I think I counted 4 cards, and that's probably not counting any smaller stuff that I've not managed to catch. So a lot of boxing at the moment.
Yeah, big time. It's like a job in itself trying to catch up with everything.
It definitely is. My wife does think I should be getting paid for this shit, but you know, the love of boxing. But Naota, where should we start?
Yeah, donate to Patreon, by the way. No, I'm just
Where should we start, man? The Forum, Tucson, Manchester. Where do you want to start?
I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Just pick whatever is, I guess, the forefront of your mind.
For me, then, let's start off with the Forum, Inglewood, California, Jorge Linares, Luke Campbell. A fight that ended up being closer than I thought. I thought it's something where Linares would kind of dominate Campbell, and throughout his professional career, Campbell's not really shown anything special. He's struggled with guys at times that he shouldn't, and I didn't expect this type of performance from Campbell. Or was it Linares kind of switching off? I did mention it yesterday that I thought halfway through the fight he kind of switched off a bit. Didn't really go forward that much. Didn't really offer much to Campbell, I thought.
Yeah. The thing is, like, the feeling that I got from it was that Linares was kind of controlling the fight. I mean, fairly handily over the most of the first portion of the fight, and then it seems like he just kind of went into cruise control, and that kind of allowed Campbell to kind of get a leg into it. And then as it got into like the mid to late rounds, I think Linares started to realize, like, oh shit, this guy's actually able to kind of box with me. He's actually able to kind of compete with me. And so then he started turning it up in the championship rounds and was able to, I guess, apparently salvage the win. You know, I didn't think it was as close as the judges had it. I had it pretty clear for Linares, but I mean, I thought that Campbell was going to give him a reasonable challenge going into the fight, though, because I know Campbell's a pretty tricky fighter, and in spite of the fact that he hadn't necessarily shown all the promise that he had kind of initially shown as he first turned pro out of the Olympics and everything, I did think that he was going to kind of step up to another level when it came to Linares and really pull out all the tricks, and he kind of did so. And you know, when I think Linares kind of fell back into the cruise control mode, so to speak, I think that allowed Campbell to kind of get into the fight and really make it a lot more difficult and force Linares to step into another gear in order to get the job done. But I thought it was a well done job for both fighters, really. Campbell in terms of being able to compete with Linares in a way that I think most people didn't expect him to, but I felt like he could. And then Linares, managing to properly, I guess, identify when things were starting to slip away from him, almost getting in towards DeMarco territory and being able to snatch the juice back, so to speak, just snatch the ball back, get the lead back and finish the job and get it done and keep his title. But I think Campbell has a pretty good future. I mean, at the weight class, and I think Linares, it's tricky for him because Linares is a guy that, because of some of those lulls, like when he'll just kind of mentally check out. There are certain fighters that I don't think are as good as him that I think could potentially beat him because of that. But otherwise, like when he's on his game, he's probably beating everybody except for Mikey Garcia, which incidentally, of course, is the guy that they're talking about him fighting next. I think that's, if it would be almost not unlike a lot of the other fighters under Golden Boy for him to fight somebody like Garcia, because they throw their fighters into the deep end pretty consistently, and that's exactly what it would be for Linares. And if he was to come out of that with the W, that would be easily one of the best wins in boxing, really, that could be had, I'd say.
Yeah, I had it 8-4, then the extra point, for the knockdowns of 116, 111. I do not know how Victor Locklin had Campbell winning. Yeah, there were a lot of close rounds in the middle, but not enough where I think Campbell would have won the fight. But it's one of those performances.
Yeah, I actually had the same score as you. I didn't even mention my score. I had the same.
Yeah, and it's one of those performances where Campbell can look back, be proud, and more opportunities will come in the future because he made a really good account of himself. So I think maybe
a good account of himself against a guy that's known to the UK audience. A guy that's fought in front of him before. So
yeah, no, exactly. And
in comparison's sake, he did really well.
I was impressed. Early on, he was kind of looking for the single shots, but halfway through, he started to, throw back in combinations, and I was slightly disappointed with Linares because that's one major highlight of his first, but more so the second fight with Corolla, where anytime Corolla would throw, he'd slip and then throw back and counter in combinations, and he never really did that. I know that kind of pesky right hook of Campbell was stopping him from setting his feet. It was always there. He was always kind of just catching him, and Jorge always kind of did that nod like, yeah, you caught me, and he did it quite often throughout the fight, and a guy's kind of getting frustrated when he's doing that. But props to Campbell. The news afterwards that his father had passed 2 weeks prior was saddening, but it showed that he had a lot of determination because he went into that fight with the great mentality, and our condolences go out to him and his family, and props to him, come back and have a few bigger fights. Lightweight in the UK and in the world scene is still pretty good, so there are a lot of good opportunities for him.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe against the whoever happens to be the WBO champ in the future, or even possibly the IBF whenever Easter winds up moving up, which I don't think is too far off, to be honest.
And you think Linares Mikey will happen next?
I'm pretty certain that it does. I think that's the most logical fight to happen next. They were playing it up quite a bit during the broadcast and everything, and considering the news with Jacobs signing with HBO, I guess Heyman's kind of inching his back way onto their airwaves, and so that would probably mean Garcia versus Linares is a very likely fight to happen. It's a very logical fight, and it's basically number one versus number two at the weight class, and that's the fights that we want to see, and they've been happening a little bit more recently than they had been in the past, and so I could very well see it getting done. That's a very good fight. I'm really looking forward to that. I think Garcia winds up smoking Linares, but I think Linares, being the fact that I think he generally knows what's in front of him, he'll turn it up for Garcia, and we'll get a really, really good fight out of it.
I'm kind of done with this fight, but you did touch upon the whole Jacobs thing, and kind of it is related to this because Campbell is signed to Matchroom. Eddie was there. The news kind of broke at the venue or just before the fight. So if you've got nothing to add about the fight, I just want to give you your thoughts on the Jacobs signing and the HBO deal.
I think it's cool. I think it's good. It's nice to see Jacobs, I guess, with a promoter who I think will be able to, who has at least more connections with regard to being able to get him like more so in a primetime slot, get him more talked about, get his name out there a bit more, and potentially get him these bigger fights, at middleweight and or super middleweight, depending on if he moves up or not, in order to get him some just good fights, good money. Possibility at titles again, and he really deserves it. I'm one of the people that thought that he defeated Gennady Golovkin. If anything, he deserved a win or a draw more so than Saul Canelo Alvarez did, and to me, he's the best middleweight in the world. So he definitely deserves to get the spotlight. He deserves to be on HBO. Because HBO has always been the network of the stars, like the pound for pound guys. That's what they've always kind of sought to be going after, and I think with Jacobs, he definitely deserves some of that attention. And then as insofar as Heyman's concerned, and some of the other fighters, he does have some other guys out there that Garcia, Errol Spence, some guys that are just about to burst into that same level of spotlight and fame that I think could definitely use it as well. Hearn hasn't necessarily done the greatest with like some other fighters, like say Luis Ortiz, but I think that was largely Yeah, I think that was largely a strategic move, basically to keep Ortiz away from Joshua.
Yeah.
And in comparison, I think Jacobs has a much better, like more attuned fan, a more attenuated fan base than Ortiz did, simply because the Cuban American kind of audience hasn't necessarily been well cultivated yet, whereas Jacobs has like the kind of Brooklyn audience and such, and I think he just has a bit more fanfare behind him to begin with, so there's more to work with there. Along with the fact that it's not a situation, I think, where they're going to try and keep him away from some bigger star like a Joshua. So, I think the risk versus reward, as far as he's concerned, is really more so on his side than otherwise, as opposed to with Ortiz.
I was interested with the signing, and I thought, who's this first fight going to be? And I am disappointed. Like, I don't really know Arias, but he is undefeated. I don't know if you know much about him, Cuban.
Yeah. He was a TMT fighter. He's been on several of the TMT cards. He's actually very good. He was on one of the top ranked undercards recently. I can't remember which one specifically. It might have been one of Lomachenko's or one of Crawford's. Like back around, I want to say March or April. But very good fighter. I used to think that he was actually the best boxer of the entire TMT squad, and I thought that Floyd was kind of foolish to kind of let him get away. But very good fighter, very solid fighter. I think he'll give Jacobs quite a few problems. He doesn't necessarily have a ton of power, but I think his technical skills are very easily on Jacobs' level. So I think we'll get a good fight out of those two.
Yeah, I just checked. It was in June on the Ward Kovalev undercard.
All right, there you go.
He fought Arif Magomedev. That's about it for that. You got anything else you want to talk about regarding Jacobs, HBO, Matchroom USA, or that Linares card?
No, that's just about it for that. Really, that's the only fight I caught on it. So that's it.
All right, let's move over to Manchester. Talk about a pretty poor fight overall between Joseph Parker and Hughie Fury. I presume you managed to catch that?
Yeah, I was able to somewhat catch it. I was kind of busy.
I bet you regretted it afterwards.
But I guess, yeah, but not really, because I was multitasking. So I guess there wasn't a whole hell of a lot necessarily to pay attention to. I thought Parker won. I thought he deserved to win. I thought I had it 8 rounds to 4 for Parker. Fury, he just was too negative without offering enough offense or enough like real counterpunching ability or power on his shots to really give him the rounds. Like he was very pitter pat. Like if you want to look at the definition of pitter pat, that was pretty much Fury. He was slapping with a lot of his shots. There was never a time, I don't think, where even Parker, at least once it got into the middle rounds, was even wary of any power that Fury had. He was pretty much able to kind of come forward as he pleased. Shoot the jabs to the body, jabs to the head, and then kind of lunging with the right hand and everything. And Parker was trying to make the fight. Fury was being especially negative. Parker isn't necessarily the most like multi-dimensional fighter to completely force you to fight. Period. Point blank. Incidentally, that kind of made him look bad. Fury had the ability to make him look bad. Not unlike say like a Lara versus a Canelo, where it's like they kind of both made each other look one-dimensional. It's like they were only able to do as much as they had both shown in most of their fights against lesser opponents, but they didn't really turn it up for each other. Somewhat of a similar situation here, albeit two guys that aren't thought of as highly as those other two. So I thought Parker took the W. Fury, I think, kind of only has himself to blame, because I do think that because of the fact that he left a lot in the tank, there was the possibility that he could have put a little bit more on the line and could have nicked those closer rounds and got the win for himself, because I think really, technically speaking, he's the better boxer of the two. But I guess, I don't know, he was a little bit too skittish of what Parker had in terms of the strength and power department, and that bit him in the ass for not really putting it out there a bit more. And Parker got the W, deservingly, I thought. And Parker's a guy that he's not thought of especially highly at heavyweight. I don't even think that he's really truly an elite heavyweight champion necessarily. I picked all the other guys to beat him, but he's a guy that's competent and he's difficult. And it's going to take a very good fighter, at the very least, a very good fighter to defeat him. So, that's about as much as I could really say about the fight.
I'm ashamed to say I had Fury winning, and I'm glad he didn't. And I say that because no one kind of deserves to not even win a fight, but win a world title, even though that doesn't mean that much these days, in that type of way. Like, he was so negative. Anytime Parker would get close, he would just grab him. He would kind of counter Parker and then grab him. The referee barely give him any type of stern warning about the holding. Like, the holding was overly excessive. And it really broke up Parker's flow. I have to say, though, that, you know, Parker was very basic. Like, he would kind of just... He'd throw the jab out there just so he could launch the right hand. And he would step in, get close, try and throw like 2 hooks and then get held and then broken up. And his flow did kind of get destroyed by all the holding, but he didn't do much himself, man. I thought his cut off the ring was poor. Huey, to be fair, did do like good changes of that direction to kind of keep Parker unsettled, but you know, you can't... At this level, you got your footwork's got to be a bit better, man. You can't just fucking follow the guy around and...
Yeah.
But I do have to say, overall, I did think that Huey landed more cleaner shots. I did have it like 7-5 to Huey, but as I said, I'm glad he didn't win.
I mean, I could see it. I'm not somebody that thinks like, oh no, Fury, there was no fucking way that Fury won or whatever. You know, it was really you're kind of trying to decide between two guys, like I mentioned with the Lara Canelo thing, who are kind of negating each other in a lot of ways, and you know, not necessarily one is like saying like kind of showing that he's the boss in the ring. You know, neither one of them really did that.
Exactly. I thought maybe the wild cards that were favourable to Parker, people were kind of going off his aggression. I don't think it was effective that much. There were 2 opportunities, I don't know if you noticed them, where I thought he hurt Huey, and I don't know if he recognised it or not, but he let Huey off the hook, man. I think he landed a big right hand, and for the next minute or so, Huey was just changing direction, but you could tell that he was kind of hurt, and I was disappointed that Parker didn't pick up on it.
Yeah, I saw that one in particular. But yeah, I don't know, man. Parker, like, I almost have a sense that, like, Parker kind of reminds me of Keith Thurman, where it's like he's kind of ballied about as being a big puncher and everything, but I don't necessarily think that he even necessarily believes in his own power completely, and I don't think that it's really that true kind of one-shot knockout power. He's got heavy hands, but he's not somebody that's gonna hurt you and then immediately like have that killer instinct to take you out right then and there. He's a guy that kind of has to break you down over time and then eventually take you out, if it's even there for him. But I think he's kind of lost a bit of confidence in that power at the higher level, and so that's kind of led him to not taking advantage of a shot that he had right there at Fury.
Yeah, just looking at my notes, I've got it down as the 9th round where he hurt him. But yeah, I'm glad Parker's won it, and he can make. I think because we don't really need the Furies to hold a belt hostage over here, because that's the last thing we need, to be honest.
Yeah, man, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, they win a belt, and then the next year and a half, you don't know what the heck they're doing.
Yep, exactly, especially with the Mick Hennessy. But I just want your opinion
doing
on
lines off the belt.
Your opinion on the production. I guess you only saw the main event, but the whole YouTube pay-per-view thing, have you got any opinion? I thought the production was kind of shoddy. There was the undercard was aired free, and then you had to kind of go to a different channel to watch it if you've paid for it. Obviously, I'm not paying. I think the early bird was £10, and if you wanted it on the day or you decided to pay for it a bit later, you had to pay £15, which is a bit overpriced for the quality of fight that it was, and the arena was very dark, and normally that's an indication that there's not many people turned up, so Mick is not the greatest promoter. That event kind of showed. I hope it is the last event for YouTube pay-per-view, because maybe other people can do it better, but Hennessy is pretty shit, so... Yeah. Did you got any opinion?
I mean, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing for a bad look for the platform, and so far as like having a pay-per-view on YouTube, because I think it can be done, and it can be done reasonably well. You know,
it's quality.
Or even if you're able to put it like, you know, put some ads on it and make it free. Either or. Like I've seen recently with a lot of the Golden Boy cards where they had either the undercard or the full card on broadcast on YouTube. I thought they've done a fantastic job with it. With Hennessy, they're not as good, but I think it was them kind of experimenting with a platform that they weren't necessarily familiar with. Almost even in the early days of Golden Boy, it was kind of iffy, the quality. Even though I thought they got off to a slightly better start. But I think it's a platform that could very well be utilized. I mean, everybody knows and watches YouTube. Everybody. There's plenty of people out there that that aren't even really tech savvy, older people and such. That they'll go on YouTube and they'll watch whatever. Even if they don't have accounts or whatever, they'll just go and they'll watch it. So, I mean, if you could kind of cultivate those eyes and get even some of the videos trending, and then people wind up kind of clicking on it on accident or on the now playing, how it kind of auto plays and such like that. I think you could definitely get a lot more fans, new fans that are either interested in boxing or even some that aren't necessarily interested in boxing. Maybe young fans that they might be watching something else different. They might be watching Tekken highlights or something, and then all of a sudden some boxing comes on, and they see somebody getting knocked out, and they're like, "Oh, damn! I didn't know boxing was this fun to watch." I just think that the platform could very well be utilized, and it could be almost like a gateway or like a Pandora's box into a lot of fans that otherwise wouldn't have necessarily been attuned to watching boxing on a regular basis.
Well, actually, you make a fair point, and I do think it comes down to quality, price, because the undercard was not that good, and the main event really wasn't that good on paper, and it didn't end up being in reality. But I saw a lot of comments in the undercard stream where people said, if it was £5, I may go for it. And I think it's one of those situations. If you make it cheaper, I think you'll get more buys, and it's a kind of ratio of where I think you'd probably make more money, because people think, oh, £5, I waste a £5 just fucking going to the shop and buying a few drinks and stuff, so right. I'll spend a £5
Well,
on
and
YouTube.
especially if you're doing it on an international basis, because on an international basis, you might have a lot of people that are in, very poor countries that might not be able to afford that extra, but, but may be able to afford, the lesser amount, £5 or whatever it happens to translate to in their local currency. Whether they're in Eastern Europe or Asia or places in South America, Africa, etc. And then you could get that many more eyes on the fighters, on the sport and everything, and truly make these guys true world champions, true worldwide stars, the way that really they should be.
Yeah. Just lastly, I don't know if you've been keeping up with it afterwards, but Mick Hennessy, the promoter of Huey Fury, is kind of outraged and is going to make appeals, and he says there were shades of Ali in the ring. If you go on Twitter, Naota, you'll see some very funny photoshops of Huey Fury dressed as Ali G. So,
I haven't even seen that. I got to check that out.
Yeah, I'll try and
I was
find
a big fan of Ali G, well before he was really well known to more people in the States. Back when they had the Ali G show on HBO and stuff. That was some classic shit, man.
Yeah, it was hilarious. But yeah, I'm kind of done with it. Undercard wise, I did watch most of it. As I said, it wasn't that great. Josh Whale Don Broadhurst fight was quite entertaining. Broadhurst got stopped late into the fight. Jimmy Kelly looked like a body-punching beast against that Kostov guy. I don't know where all this power came from. Joe Murray looked pretty shitty against Matty Fagan. I thought he was quite lucky to get the win. Pete McDonough got a decision over Shane Singleton, which was kind of fair, but McDonough's pretty old. I thought Singleton should have took him out. And the first time I saw Yusuf Safa, young dude, 23, super featherweight, but, he was making a few errors, but, he's young, and yeah, we'll see more from him, I guess, in the future. That's if Mick Hennessy hasn't lost all his money on that card on Saturday. But yeah, I'm done on that, Naota.
Yeah, so am I.
Where should we go to next? Let's talk about Friday, Tucson, Arizona. Oscar Valdez, Genesis. I love that name, man. Like, I'm gonna call my kid Genesis, man. Like that's the
Genesis.
That's the coolest name in the world.
Yeah, anytime I hear Genesis, I think Sega. The old.
In the UK though, it wasn't called the Genesis. It was called the Mega Drive, which I don't think has the same.
Oh yeah, the Mega Drive. That's right.
It doesn't have
that's
the same
that's
ring
what it was
to
called
it.
in Japan also.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Genesis Servania. Pretty good scrap, man. Fun fight.
Yeah, very, very good fight. I think it's, another addition really to a great year of like kind of fight of the year candidates, really. Valdez appeared to kind of control the action for the first few rounds. But Servania started hitting him, he started making him really pay for some of those kind of amateurish and literally like amateurish, mistakes that, Valdez would make, where it's like he kind of, drops his hands and shoots off to the side, almost kind of like, impressed with his work and such. Not unlike what James DeGale does, actually. And something that he often used to do as an amateur, as well as the fact that when he had Servania hurt, there were several times where he would just start loading up, throwing like those wide hooks. And that's something that I used to see him do like big time as an early pro. And he did it in under the AIBA rules repeatedly. And that's something where even though there's power on those shots, the fact that you can see him coming, and if you have a good enough chin like Servania did, you could really brace for him and be able to take him. And that was just something that Valdez definitely needs to work on, because it's really not going to work out well for him against really the top level guys at featherweight. But he's been able to get away with it. He was able to get away with it to a certain degree here against Servania. I had Valdez winning. It was a close fight though, and a dangerous one. Servania is a guy that I had kind of been aware of because he had been on a few of the undercards with Zhou Shiming. He'd been on some of those Macau cards and had gotten some pretty nice knockout victories there. So he's a big puncher, and he's actually also, there's a good YouTube video out there of him in an open sparring exhibition with Naoya Inoue. The two of them going at it. That's pretty good viewing. Showing, I guess, what Inoue may be able to do in the future at higher weights, possibly. But yeah, Servania did a really good job in there, showing out and, kind of making him a name to be looked out there for, in light of, Valdez having a bit more trouble with him than I think most people expected to. He did, I think, hurt him a bit on a couple occasions with those right hands kind of up high on the temple. He has a good left hook as well, power in both hands. He's a very physically strong guy. He was able to kind of bully Valdez in spots, kind of force Valdez a bit more on the back foot. And even that, there's a certain savvy about that where he wasn't allowing Valdez to get full like momentum and full strength, full leverage on all those power punches that he was throwing, because he almost had him like up on his toes or up on his heels. In a lot of respects. So, solid fight. I thought, Valdez definitely deserved the victory. Did a good job. I think it's going to be real troublesome for him in the near future, though, against some of the better fighters there. But at the same time, being with Top Rank, I think kind of puts him in a bit of a privileged position because of the fact that he won't necessarily be forced into fights against Gary Russell or Leo Santa Cruz or Jesus Rojas necessarily. I think he'll kind of get a little bit. Him and Aram and such will be able to be a bit more choosy about his opponent selection, and he'll be able to kind of feast off of high reward, lesser risk fights in comparison to those guys. And they mentioned Carl Frampton. I think he beats Frampton. I think it's a good fight, but I do think that he beats him. But it's kind of funny because they both actually fight in somewhat of a similar fashion. So I think that'll be a really entertaining fight. They'll kind of solve each other in certain respects, and it'll be a good kind of a slugfest between the two of them.
I'd favour Frampton, but before we get into that, just quickly, you mentioned in your sum up that Valdez is sorry, I lost my train of thought. You mentioned that when he drops his hands and goes off to the side. I've never noticed that in previous fights. I don't know whether it's just me not picking up on it, but do you think that's just a bad habit he's picked up recently, or do you think he thought that he was out of the danger zone, but then obviously Servania kind of stepped in with those kind of launching in hooks and just caught him?
I think it's a bit of both. He's been so much better than a lot of his recent opponents, and it's something, like I said, that he used to do in the amateurs and such quite a bit, where you don't really pay quite as much, with the headgear and all that stuff. And with Servania, I don't think that, I think he kind of underestimated Servania's ability to cut him down, and be able to close the distance on him. and Servania has actually got reasonably quick hands and feet in order to be able to cut that extra couple of inches down and and land big shots on you, and get full extension on them as well. So I think that's basically where it bit him in the ass. He got a little bit too used to guys not being able to close that distance properly, especially recently, and he paid for it.
Just my view quickly. Servania impressed me in the sense of he would always counter back quickly. He'd catch and shoot the hooks, throw it straight back. Like you said, he'd close the distance quickly. And Valdez, I've mentioned it every time we've reviewed him. He loads up on every shot, which I kind of like because it gives you entertaining fights. And there's that kind of always risk that he might get caught in between, and he might maybe start fading towards the end of the fight. And props to his gas tank because he never really does. He never really seems slow down in the later rounds. There's that saying, the star that shines twice as bright lives for half as long. And I do think that this style that he has, if he doesn't correct it, will kind of limit his career. If you're having kind of wars every time you fight, then you're not going to be reaching 35, 36 and continuing to fight. It's definitely going to shorten it. But I do love watching him fight because from the majority of the times I've seen, he's always in fun fights. So regarding Frampton, I just think Frampton would just kind of catch him in between with counters the way he did with Leo in the first fight, because Valdez doesn't really look comfortable going backwards, and he looks happier kind of coming forward, throwing those big looping shots, especially that right hand that he throws. It's kind of like an overhand right, but it's so wide, man. I'm going to mention Conlan as well. I don't know if it's something they do with Manny Robles, but Conlan throws a very similar kind of overhand wide right, so both guys need to maybe improve that. But I like Valdez. He's fun to watch. We watch boxing for fun fights. He provides that. What more can I say?
Yeah, very much so. And if he does go farther and excels a bit farther than kind of, I guess, where we're placing him at right now, then hey, props to him. He definitely has some things to work on, and hopefully he's able to, for his sake, that he's able to improve upon him. But I mean, kind of going back to him versus Frampton, if they do fight next, I think it's a very even fight. I think it's a 50-50 for sure. And funny enough, I actually think that Frampton would actually have the advantage kind of going forward, because I think those straighter, sharper shots, shorter ones, would give him that advantage. And actually, I think it might actually behoove Valdez to either be all the way on the inside, pushing Frampton back, or all the way on the outside, making Frampton have to reach in for him and trying to counter him. But I think it's a good fight. Very, very interesting as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely. Did you manage to watch the rest of the card, Campbell versus Jesse Hart?
Yeah, I saw Ramirez and Hart. Another good fight. I thought, unlike most people, that Hart was actually going to be a pretty good challenge for him. I thought I've seen Hart before, and I knew that he's a very competent kind of boxer puncher. And he was able to kind of punish Ramirez in certain respects. He was able to kind of catch Ramirez, I guess, reaching in a little bit. Ramirez doesn't really have long arms. He's got kind of T-Rex syndrome. He's a very tall guy, but he has, kind of short arms for his height. So he was able to kind of take advantage of that and kind of catch Ramirez reaching in a bit. But when Ramirez was on the inside, he was able to kind of take over. He hurt Hart pretty badly, dropped him, of course. But he doesn't really have that kind of killer about him where he's trying to finish you off. I think his general state of mind is more so kind of workmanlike, boxing, kind of boxing slash swarming, I guess, high volume boxer is what you could potentially call him. He tends to, I guess, prefer to outbox his opponent, whether it's on the inside or all the way on the outside. At that mid range is, I guess, where his danger zone is as well. But I mean, solid win for him. I've heard a few people saying hey, he should probably fight David Benavidez next. I think that's a really tough fight actually for both of them, because I think Benavidez has some trouble cutting off the ring, and Ramirez could give him a lot of trouble in that respect. But on the inside, I think Benavidez would have a big advantage over him. I think that would be kind of a logical fight, considering the fact that Ramirez just fought in Tucson. That's where Benavidez is basically from the Phoenix, Arizona area. It could be almost like a modern day, bigger, much like supersized version of Chiquita Gonzalez versus Michael Carbajal. Mexican American from Arizona versus Mexican proper from Mexico. I think it'd be a really good fight, and potentially two of, if not the two best super middleweights in the world, two of like the top 3 or 4 best super middleweights in the world. I'd be really interested in it. Hart, I think, has a good future ahead of him. This is a pretty big step up from the guys he had been kind of fighting recently. Unfortunately, he didn't quite back up all the talk that he had leading into it, but he gave a good account of himself, and I think if he's able to kind of work on some things, he'll be able to compete well enough in order to potentially get a title, possibly in the future. Depending on exactly who he's matched up against.
Yeah, I don't really remember watching Hart before, so it was my first time. I saw some good things, but technique-wise, the way he kind of threw his punches, I was a bit disappointed with the guy that was undefeated. But it was one of those fights when he would stand there in front of Ramirez and throw his punches. He was quite open. But when he would, kind of move and pot shot, that's when I really give him the rounds, even though he was kind of running, but he was kind of still throwing shots, landing counters, landing combinations on Ramirez. And then I had it quite close. I don't know about you, but I think I had it the same as one of the judges. I had it 115, 112, so basically 7-5, and then the extra point for the knockdown in the second round. But yeah, I thought Gilberto should have won it a bit easier. He let some of those middle rounds go a bit when he was just stalking Hart, but not really landing much. He was kind of just walking around trying to land the body shots, and then he was getting picked off a bit, but a pretty fun fight to watch. I haven't really got much more to say.
Yeah, I had it 116, 111 for what it's worth, but
yeah, so basically one.
Yeah, Ramirez's, I think, ultimate flaw that's probably going to wind up getting him a loss at some point in the future is kind of what you were alluding to, and what I somewhat alluded to as well, is the fact that he doesn't necessarily have that point where it's like he bites down and he really goes for the gusto, where he's really trying to put it down, put his opponent away, or really get, prove himself above and beyond, like, yeah, I'm the boss in here, I'm the man, I'm stronger than you, I'm physically better than you, and things like that. It's like he's a little bit too hands off with it, a little bit too finessed, I think, for his worth.
Definitely. Let's talk about Conlan. Did you manage to catch that one? Wasn't much to catch, to be honest.
No, I wasn't able to.
That's fair. He fought a part-time boxer. I don't know, like these type of level of opponents. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I've mentioned it time and time again. Conlan, so many amateur fights, so much experience at a high level. Like, does he really need to be fighting Kenny Guzman, who's, I think he's a carpenter full time, and then he trains, in the morning he does his road work, in the evening he goes to the gym, and it's kind of dangerous, man, because Guzman got hurt with a big right hand, and he was pretty out of it, to be honest. He did manage to get up. The ref stopped the fight, which I think was a good decision, and I don't know, like, yeah, you could say Conlan's is his 4th fight, it's experience, but what type of experience is this going to give you, man? Is this like, you've had better experience than this in the Olympics, in high-level amateur tournaments, so I don't know. I know Bob likes to take him slow, but it's unnecessary for me. Also, there was Robson Conceicao on the undercard. Did you manage to catch that, Naoto?
Oh yeah, no, I haven't seen him yet either. I heard that he was looking really good, as he has generally throughout his first few fights. But what did you think?
Yeah, he fought Carlos Osorio, 13-7-1. I don't know. I'm not Conceicao's biggest fan, Naoto. I know I was impressed in the Olympics, but maybe that's because he had the hype of Brazil behind him, and every time he fought, it was like a World Cup final in that arena. But he's still very slappy with that right hand. He's good when he throws like the 1-2 and the 1-2-3-4, but I don't know. You should have seen the way he was slipping punches, Naota. He was moving so much. Like, anyone half decent would have just caught him with some uppercuts and hooks and probably just laid him out, because he was just basically, his upper body was just basically going from one side all the way to the other side just to kind of slip punches. And I'm thinking, what are you doing?
It's a very amateurish style.
Exactly. I was really surprised the way he was doing that. But I think Bob will actually be extra cautious with this dude because I think he's signing for a longish deal. I think he'll probably try.
Well, yeah, he was a gold medalist, so
yeah,
I'd imagine he put a lot of money behind him.
I think Bob will try and build him up to maybe 10-ish, 15-ish, and start having him fight back in Brazil. But I think he'll take it really easy with him. I don't think he'll go out fast. He's got fast time. He's not shit. Like, I don't want people to think like this guy's terrible, but he's got a lot of flaws for me.
He's a very good fighter, but he has a lot of amateur tendencies, and I can even see that like in the Olympics, like compared to some of the guys that he fought, that he would probably take a little bit longer to translate into the pros, as opposed to somebody like even the guy that he fought in the finals, the French guy, Sofiane Oumiha, who still hasn't even turned pro yet. He's still in the AIBA system. But
how do you remember all these names,
bro? Pro style.
I can't remember someone that fought last week. How do you remember the guy he fought in the final?
Well, I especially remember it because it was also the same guy that knocked out Amnat Ronron in the Olympics. So,
your memory's on point, man. It's on point.
Emblazoned itself, yeah. But it'll probably take him a little while. He's got some of the good fundamentals about him. He's got pretty good power, pretty good hand speed, good long reach. For the division and everything. But yeah, guys that are able to kind of cut the distance on him are, I think, going to be ultimately the guys that he has the most trouble with. Guys that are able to kind of be gutted out and get gritty on the inside with him.
Yeah, and I forgot to say he is still pretty wide with his punches, especially his left hook. It's probably got a bit better since when I watched him on his debut, and it's probably his second fight. It is slightly shorter, but it's still pretty wide for my liking, really, because I like those hooks to be a bit more compact. But interesting. I don't know. It's a bit funny now. So I watched that on Box Nation. They picked it up. Box Nation didn't show ESPN. Commentary for that. They had Christina Poncha. Normally they have the Colonel on commentary, but I know he does a lot of commentary for Joseph Parker, so I'm not sure if he was doing the international stream for Parker over in the UK. So they had another guy who was called Robert Flores. I think he works for the ESPN. I did Google him, and I've seen bits of him talking to different ESPN panelists and stuff. So, but I liked him, man, because he was a good kind of color commentator, and main commentator, and he was talking about Conceicao, that he would really wind up his right uppercut, and he did. Like, he was throwing it from his knees almost, and he pointed that out. Up until that point, Poncho was just talking about how famous Conceicao is in Brazil and how well he did in the Olympics and blah, blah, blah. And then I liked the fact that he was a bit real and he pointed out a flaw. And then Poncho was like, yes, you're right, actually. He does really kind of leave opportunities to get counted in between. And yeah, I like this dude, man. I not really heard him commentate before, but usually HBO kind of have yes men on commentary. So it was a bit refreshing to have someone actually criticize one of their golden boys in air quotes, in a sense. Yeah,
that's good.
But yeah, I'll get you that link actually, and you can see the fight yourself when you get a chance. But apart from that, I think I'm pretty much done on that Tucson card, Naota, unless you got anything to add.
No, that's about all I have for it too.
Right. Lastly, I guess, was the World Boxing Super Series card in San Antonio, Texas. Doritkos versus Kudryashov. 2 rounds of two brutality, I guess.
Yeah, seriously. Brutality is the perfect word for it, even if you're going on the Mortal Kombat tip with, how savage that knockout was. I knew this was going to be just a fun fight for as long as it lasted. I knew it was only probably going to last 2 or 3 rounds because of how big a puncher and how much killer instinct both guys have. And that's pretty much what it was. It was actually kind of funny because the first round they were both throwing a lot of jabs. They were both kind of measuring each other out. But as soon as that second round started, it was bombs away. And it looked like Kudryashov started kind of trying to go into that defensive kind of shoulder roll / high guard-esque mode, and once again it failed him because Doritkos managed to land a sweet 3-punch combination that finally put him down. That right hand especially that caught him, like, I guess, at like the angle of the jawline. put him down and put him down for good. And that was all she wrote, man. It was, two huge punchers and two guys that, if they touch you, it could be lights out. It could be game over. Ticos is a really difficult fighter. I think he's going to be difficult for anybody and everybody in the WBSS as well as in the cruiserweight division at large. Simply because, he uses his reach really, really well. He kind of jabs to the body, jabs up to the chest, and then jabs to the head. And he does that, and he measures out the right hand so nicely that he'll get full extension on that shot. Like I've said it recently on a couple of different occasions that, the Cuban AIBA system, it generally creates a lot of, back foot heavy defensive fighters, but as a side effect, it also creates a lot of fighters who are very capable of solving that style in different respects. Say like Gamboa, where he's able to kind of jump in and launch out combinations. With Dorticos, it's created a guy who's capable of just getting perfect extension, perfect amount of reach to get full power on his shots and utilize that power in a major way. And that's exactly what he did here against Kudryashov, and exactly the reason why, I said even going into this that, he's my dark horse candidate to win the whole thing. And that even includes against somebody like a Usyk, who has more of that kind of hands-off defensive style. I think that Dorticos could potentially catch him on a few of those occasions and, potentially do some damage. But as of his next fight, I think, what is it? Garcia versus Blarocek, who is potential next opponents. I favor him over both guys. I think Garcia probably beats Blarocek. I think Blarocek is a bit over the hill.
Yeah.
And, Dorticos, you better watch out, because if he hits you, not even just if he hits you clean, but if he just touches you with those hands, those heavy ass hands, it could be the beginning of the end.
Yeah, it was it's pretty crazy because this kind of went up against Linares Campbell, and I had this recording because I don't know what it is for the US, but at the moment in the UK with some of these WBSS fights, some of them are going to be pay-per-view, so obviously the ones involving Brit, so Groves is pay-per-view, Eubank's pay-per-view. The Callum Smith fight was on free-to-air, and then these cruiserweight fights that we had, the Usyk one and this one, they were on the pay-per-view channel, but you could watch it for free, which I don't really understand. That doesn't make sense, but yeah, so I don't know how it is in the US, Neil. To are you catching these fights on their website? Are they being shown on terrestrial TV? Or?
Yeah, no, I caught them on the website. I don't think they were broadcast on TV at all.
Yeah, which is a shame, man, because I'm gonna go into the overall experience so far for me of the WBSS, but just quickly on the fight, yeah, it was crazy. 2 rounds. I know Kudryashov, man, he did that same thing he did against Doridola in the first fight when he got hurt. He kind of didn't know what to do. He was trying to do head movement. He was trying to throw back at times, but why not just grab hold? I'm an advocate for taking a knee, to be honest. I know some people frown upon it and shit, but if you're hurt, those extra 10-15 seconds you can get to kind of recompose yourself, it's a benefit. Yeah, you lose a point, but it's going to help you maybe possibly later on in the fight when you're coming back. So yeah,
and I think most people criticize taking a knee, when they take a knee and then they get counted out on their knee. That's that is kind of some bitch shit. But when you're taking a knee to clear your head and then give yourself an opportunity to try and win the fight, that's something completely different. So I'm kind of with you on that regard.
Yeah. But yeah, he got lazy, man. Doriakos landed that kind of shot on his shoulder, on his left shoulder, and then he threw a counter left which missed, and then threw a lazy jab, and bang, man, that right hand just came over the top, and Doriakos just kind of fucking laid him out, man. And that facial expression as well, that's going to be a meme for years alongside that Curtis Stevens one. That was crazy.
Yeah, a big knockout, and I think we're going to get a lot more from him.
Yep, definitely. Okay, just overall experience so far. Obviously, I was away when the first 2 fights were shown, so I'm impressed, man. I like their whole kind of color scheme. It's all aesthetically good looking, the black and the gold and the white when it's used. It's very uniform. You look at all the 3 cards they've had so far. Basically, the setup's been exactly the same. Having Jimmy Lennon in there is a benefit because he always adds a bit of class. And the branding is good as well. The whole TV icons and logos that they use, it has an expensive feel. If someone's like channel hopping and they just land across this, they're going to think this is some high-level kind of sporting event. It doesn't look like a leisure centre or a gym being converted into a venue for the night. It does have an expensive feel to it. I don't know if you've noticed, Neil, to like they'll around the ring they have like the circular seating, and they have these spotlights that kind of go upwards and kind of give it almost like a Colosseum effect with these spotlights. I don't know. I just really like it. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing, as they say, and I think they've done a good job with the whole with the whole production.
Yeah, I like it. I'm definitely I like, like how they have the little like holograms of them and stuff like before they walk out and things like that. The whole production of the way that they show it, like for the atmosphere. I enjoy it. Like to me that screams, you're watching world class boxing. You're watching 2 champions.
It almost kind of reminds me of like when I was a kid watching that movie. Did you ever? I don't know if you ever saw it, The Running Man, with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
How? Come on, bro! Everyone see that's a classic.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that. It really does. It's like like you're about to see 2 guys go at it, like fight to the death level. But maybe that's because of the fact that both guys are such big punchers that it's kind of the feeling that I got from it. But I do like the production. I really enjoy it in spite of the fact that trying to actually find it, find the fight, if it's going to be broadcast or if you got to go to the website or whatever, it's a little bit janky. I like the way that the production value is excellent, and it's kind of unique. It's a little bit different than what you're getting from HBO or PBC. It's just different enough that it kind of has its own gravitas to it, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, on your US website stream, who does the commentary?
I'm not even sure exactly who was doing the commentary because I was paying I was kind of half watching and half doing.
Was it
some
someone
other
British
stuff,
or was it American?
No, they were American. I just honestly can't remember the names off the top of my head.
That's fine. The only reason I mention it is because that's my only negative. Like, I like Ronald McIntosh, but when he's with someone, he needs a tag team partner. I've never favoured just one commentator. I think they kind of talk too much. They kind of repeat the same things. I think they need someone to go back and forth with, and that's my only slight negative. Ronald's good at what he does, but he just needs someone to tag in every so often, I think. But apart from that, WBSS so far for me, thumbs up. Very impressed. Just quickly going into it while we're talking about WBSS, the 2 other fights that occurred, I've not mentioned them. Only watched them basically today. So Usyk, Huck, and Smith versus Skoglund. Have you seen the Huck Usyk fight, Neilton?
Yeah. Usyk kind of did the damn thing. Just kind of cleanly outboxed Huck. He showed a little bit of moments of his old glory and everything, but the thing is, Usyk was just too young and too good for him. Basically, I got the sense that in his younger days, Huck would have really given Usyk a fight. Like, he really would have given him just a fight of the year. A great fight, and possibly would have won it. But in there against him today, Usyk was a little bit too classy and a bit too spry on his legs for Huck to be able to kind of close the distance and be able to get off the shots at the right moments in order to make Usyk pay a bit. And Usyk did a good job of boxing the way that I've said that he should be boxing, and really kind of sticking to more orthodox technical standards as opposed to, trying to showboat and do all that Lomachenko-esque bullshit, which he does very subpar in comparison to Lomachenko. So, good for Usyk turning it up with the proper style that he needed to defeat a guy like Huck, a good veteran. And Huck, I thought, made a reasonably well account of himself for a guy that's, that is a veteran, a guy that's well worn, war torn, and such. It was a pretty good fight, and props to Usyk for getting the W and kind of doing what you're supposed to do to an old man.
Yeah, like you could tell it was the ghost of Huck. He had moments in the fight where he'd try and land a jab and then he'd actually land a decent right hand to the body, but few and far between. Usyk's movement early on, and I kind of agree that he does try to do a poor version of Lomachenko at times, where he hasn't got the lateral movement locked off, where if he sees that Huck's going to throw something, he'll just put the high guard on and then go backwards in straight lines.
He's not as well coordinated as Lomachenko is.
Yeah, he doesn't step across to the side and maybe look for the angles. He just goes back in straight lines. But for such a big guy, he is quite like quick on his feet, and he did what I thought he was going to do beforehand. I thought he would kind of like tiptoe early, throw a lot of tip-tappy shots, and then slowly throughout the fight just start landing heavier shots, and that's what he did, man. And eventually, like, Huck was just getting like beaten from one corner of the ring to the other corner of the ring, and there was one point, I think it was the fourth, where like Usyk landed a beautiful counter uppercut, and then like 3 other hooks to the head, and they landed clean. And when he's on point, like, Usyk does look good, and for such a big dude throwing so many punches, man, it's fun to watch, man. And for a German crowd also, like, normally we see these muted crowds in Germany. Like, that crowd was lit, man. It looked like it was a good place to be to watch a fight.
Yeah, I'm sure, there's probably quite a few people that were like longtime Huck fans, and hoping that he could get one last W and everything, and then probably a fair amount of Usyk fans as well. So I'd imagine that that probably had a good bit to do with the crowd's liveliness in comparison to past crowds in Germany.
Yep, definitely. And did you manage to catch the Smith-Skoglund fight from last week?
I haven't gotten a chance to catch up on it yet, no.
No worries. Quickly, this Skoglund, I said in our previous show that I don't know, he looks like he does everything okay, but there's nothing special about him. But he impressed me. He's coming down from light heavyweight, and I think maybe he should, if he can make it comfortably, and whatever method he used to get down, whether it was just strict dieting or just combination of a lot of road work just to get his weight down, but maybe stay at 168. I think there's more opportunities for him there. Like, he's not the biggest dude. Callum towered over him really, and Callum is a big 168 guy himself, so I think there's better fights for him at 68, so maybe try and just stay there. But for the fight itself, Smith got off to a good start. Maybe the first 3 rounds he was kind of just using the jab well, the 1-2s pretty well, and Skoglund was on the back foot, Smith was coming forward. But the fourth, he kind of switched it. Skoglund came out kind of on the front foot, throwing lots of jabs. His jab's probably his best weapon, man. He used it really effectively, and when he started to kind of put Callum under pressure and throwing combinations, I'm not sure, I've not looked into it afterwards, but I think he maybe broke his nose, or he definitely did bust up his nose, because from the fourth onwards, a lot of blood was coming out, and for the next few rounds, Callum just, I don't know if the nose was affecting him, the breathing, but he kind of, he had a flat period after that point, until maybe after the 6th, where I'm getting mixed up. It was the 5th round, I think, when Skoglund kind of put it up him and bust his nose. But from that point, Smith had a flat period until later on, where he maybe got a second window, was breathing a bit better, and he hurt Skoglund with the right hand in the 11th. And then after a barrage, Skoglund took a knee just to kind of recuperate. And I think I had it about 8-4, and then the knockdown, which is I think was just fair. And we always see these fights where guys talk trash and beforehand, sometimes they make up afterwards, sometimes they're still talking trash afterwards, but from start to finish, the whole preparation of this fight, the whole build-up, both guys were very respectful, and it was nice to see, man. I do like where they're beating each other for 12 rounds, and at the end, the touch gloves, and you can tell when it's a proper embrace rather than when the ref's telling them to touch gloves and embrace. And it's good to see that, that's one thing I really like when I haven't sparred for a long time, but when I was sparring, there'd be a dude that, like, he'd try and take your head off in sparring, and then you kind of had like a beef with him because you're thinking, why are you going so hard? It's only sparring, man, take it easy. And then after a few good sparring sessions, you kind of gain a respect for each other, and then you kind of squash that beef. But yeah, man, it's good to have just 2 good guys fight and then there's no beef afterwards, man. And I enjoyed that fight. I thought the production value was good. There was one period where they're both kind of standing on these pedestals just before they get into the ring, which I thought was a bit corny, but yeah, really good job by the WBSS, so props to them. Right, Neil, to what else have we kind of missed now? I think we're kind of pretty much done on last week and the bits that we missed for the WBSS, so...
fight card in the Philippines.
Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Milan Melindo in the main event against Taiki Butler for the IBF Light Flyweight Championship. Good fight between these two. Real heated, a lot of heated exchanges. Melindo manages to drop Butler in the 12th round in a knockdown that he definitely needed, and got the victory. Got the split decision win over Butler for it. To me, it was a fight that could go either way. I do slightly favor Butler as to getting the win. I thought that he did win the fight, but I wouldn't argue with anybody that had Melindo winning close as well. One of the judges, though, I thought was way out of whack. He had it 117 to 110 for Melindo, and there's no way in hell that he won that many rounds. The problem with Melindo is he waits a little bit too long. It's like he'll be trying to land one or two just really hard power shots, and he'll kind of he'll sit on those shots really, really strongly, but in the midst of that, like, he can be outboxed, and that's largely what Butler did. Butler was actually coming forward a lot more in this fight than he has in the past. He's a lot more of a finesse kind of defensive fighter for the most part. But he's very awkward enough that he's actually able to do reasonably well coming forward as well. He throws punches from kind of weird, almost Maidana-esque angles. So it's kind of a strange style when you're watching him. He's almost like trying to mix like parts of like Mayweather and Maidana together. In terms of the way that he's throwing punches, but also the way that he's kind of moving defensively. Very, very awkward. He almost looks unsteady on his feet in the way that he kind of moves. And that unsteadiness actually is kind of, I think, what led to the knockdown, because Melindo kind of caught him at an awkward angle with a right hand up high on the temple and kind of dropped him, with Butler's kind of foot like halfway up in the air. But overall, it was a good fight. Good effort for Butler. He definitely has made a good comeback since he lost to the 25-1 underdog Byron Rojas last year. And he gave a good account of himself. So I would be willing to bet that we'll see him in another championship fight fairly soon. And Melindo has been racking up some pretty nice wins. He just scored a first-round knockout over Akira Higashi, one of the premier fighters in the lighter divisions. Just defeated Butler, another one of the premier fighters in the lighter divisions the last few years. So, he's doing really nicely. And, he said that he wants to try and unify in the near future. There was the possibility that Kosei Tanaka and Ryoichi Taguchi, the WBO and the WBA champions, were going to unify later this year. But in light of the fact that Tanaka just had an orbital bone fracture in his last fight, which he won by knockout. He's going to be on the shelf for the next few months, and so the Taguchi might, at the very least, will be pushed back until the beginning of next year, if not canceled altogether. And Tanaka might actually move up. Tanaka's talked in the past about trying to win titles in 5 weight classes, and I think a large part of that is because of the fact that he drains like a motherfucker in order to make 105 and now 108 even. Unfortunately, the Tanaka fight may not happen, but perhaps Melindo versus Taguchi could happen, or Pedro Guevara is going to be challenging Kenshiro, the WBC champion, fairly soon, and maybe one of those two guys could get it done. Especially Guevara. Guevara is a guy that's definitely willing to kind of put it on the line out there, and at some point we may be able to get lineal / kind of Ring Magazine champion here at 108 pounds. It's a division I think that's definitely heating up with the amount of talent that's there. So good fight there. And then on the undercard was an IBF super flyweight eliminator between John-Riel Casimero, who a lot of people know for knocking out, I'm not wrong, beating the crap out of him, knocking out Charlie Edwards, getting chairs thrown at him against Luis Lazarte after he knocked him out. He's a road warrior, guy that has defeated the likes of Guevara and Ramon Garcia Herales in the past. So he has definitely a very, very good record behind him. But he actually went in and was defeated by Jonas Sultan. Sultan, who is a pretty big underdog, considering the fact that he's 13-3, isn't as experienced as Casimero on the world international stage, but he was able to kind of outbox him. Casimero, not unlike Melindo, is a guy that kind of waits a little bit too long, and he's trying to just knock you out with one shot. the entire time. He's just a very, very violent type of a fighter, a very violent mentality. But he just didn't get the job done here against Sultan, who was able to kind of figure him out and just kind of outwork him as well as outbox him over the distance. I thought 117, 111 for one of the cards was a little bit wide, but 115, 113, and 116, 112 I thought was a bit more appropriate for Sultan to have defeated Casimiro, who just basically waited too long. And so now Sultan is the mandatory challenger for the belt that Joanna Kaz holds, the IBF title. Arcaz, incidentally, may be potentially soon fighting against Naoya Inoue in a unification, depending on what happens there. Inoue's contract is such that he can only fight a guy that's rated in the top 3 of his sanctioning by the WBO or one of the other champions. So it's looking like him versus Arcaz may happen fairly soon. It could be a very big money fight. Whether it's in Japan only or if it's in Japan and they have HBO broadcasting it, remotely, which I think would be a very good look for HBO, considering that they've done that in the past with some Klitschko fights, for instance, and say like some Froch fights and some UK fights. Kazagi Kessler, I believe, was done in that regard as well. But a couple of good fights, and 108 and 115 are definitely heating up in a major way. With the increased attention, and it's looking all very nice as it turns out, for getting some consistent, not only best fight, the best action, but I think even more so. I think the talent is rich in both of these divisions. As rich as any time in either of the divisions' history. So I think we could be in for some really special fights.
Thank you, Neota. Also, obviously, we were away for 2 weeks. Do you want to give any thoughts about Golovkin, Canelo, and then Superfly?
Yeah, Golovkin and Canelo. In a way, it was a bit of a letdown because it seemed like they both kind of left a bit on the table. Neither of them really stepped it up to the next level and made it like truly like an all-time classic fight, like a lot of people thought that it might become. Canelo did a good job of, making it so that Golovkin kind of reached in a lot, kind of pot-shotted him a bit here and there, and was able to kind of get, the favorable judging as he tends to get. I thought Golovkin won the fight. I thought it was 8 rounds to 4 for Golovkin. But, it's one of those things where Alvarez, he tends to get very close rounds, and, he was able to kind of steal a few rounds, I think, here and there. The Adelaide Bird scorecard was fucking ridiculously bad. It was really, really bad. One of the worst scorecards I've seen in recent history. But once again, when you're fighting Canelo, you're going to get scorecards like that. It happened against Mayweather, it happened against Lara, it happened against Trout. People, for whatever reason, and I don't think it's especially hard to figure out, like to give this guy rounds that he really doesn't deserve. Golovkin, I think, is slowing down a little bit. I think at his age, with all the fights that he's been in, in spite of the fact that he hasn't necessarily been in quote-unquote wars where like you thought he was at risk of losing, he has been hit quite a bit. He's been hit quite a bit throughout his career, whether it's that he let it happen or not. I mean, the fact remains that that does pile up on you. I do think that he is also struggling to make the weight, not unlike the way that Hopkins was around the same age. A guy that, very similar to Golovkin, would stay pretty much close to weight all year round, and I think his body was kind of clamoring to move up, at some point, and that's why Hopkins looked refreshed when he moved up to light heavyweight. I think something similar could happen with Golovkin if he moves up to super middleweight, in spite of the fact that the opponents up there might be a little bit riskier because they might be able to take the punches better, deliver them harder, etc. But I do think that he might be struggling to make the weight. Canelo, incidentally, I've seen a bit of controversy about whether he even made the weight or not. He was only on the scale for a couple of seconds before he kind of jumped off, and there's kind of strange circumstances regarding that. But whether he did or not, it seems like his old stamina issues kind of came back to haunt him. Had his stamina been a bit better, he may have been able to kind of really put a bit more out there and potentially have gotten the win a little bit more cleanly and clearly. But at the same time, I have a feeling that Golovkin might have been holding back a little bit more than he normally would as well. I don't know. It's kind of a strange fight, a bit of a letdown, especially considering a lot of the fights that I just mentioned. I thought outdid it. I thought Ortiz versus Kudryashov outdid it. In terms of fun factor, I thought that Butler versus
versus Melindo. Outdid it in terms of how much fun I had watching the fight. Valdez, Servania. Like, there was moments in Valdez, Servania where I felt like, when I was first watching boxing when I was a kid and everything, I was like, oh, damn, you know what I mean? Because, they were very abrupt, the circumstances when either of them hurt one another. And we didn't really quite get that pop-off factor with Golovkin and Canelo. Never quite reached that peak where, like, it really exploded into a slugfest, into a Barrera Morales or Pacquiao Marquez, where it's like you're getting these excellent exchanges between the two of them. And that's really unfortunate.
No, I
maybe
agree
we'll
to
get
that.
that in the rematch.
I agree to that. It felt like someone lit a firework, but it's one of those fireworks that you see the fuse go, but then the actual firework doesn't go off. And you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
can we approach the firework? Should we wait a bit? But yeah, it just missed something.
Exactly.
It lacked something.
Yeah, it's like you're always anticipating that where it's like, did he hurt him? Did he hit him? Oh no, he didn't. He's not gonna jump on him.
Exactly.
And it's really unfortunate, man. But who knows? Maybe we'll get a bit more in the rematch. I'm not sure if a rematch necessarily happens immediately, though. I'd imagine the way that Canelo and Golovkin tend to be, they're going to wait till Golovkin gets a little bit older. Golovkin may try to unify next and then move up in weight, as has been ballied about recently by Abel Sanchez. So who knows? Maybe the rematch or the third fight may come at super middleweight. I think Canelo is even at middleweight, he's cutting a lot in order to make the weight. I mean, just all the talk about him, not even bothering with the IBF weigh-in and all that shit. And there's a lot to that. He's a big guy. He may not be a tall guy, but he's a big guy. People need to get out of here with that nonsense about just because you're fucking short, you're not big. Mike Tyson was short, but he was much fucking bigger than Celestino Caballero's 5'10", rail thin ass. So, we may see it in the future, although it may not come quite as soon as we want it to. Considering that Jacobs is now with HBO, maybe we'll get Jacobs Golovkin too, or potentially Jacobs Canelo in the future. I'd imagine Jacobs Golovkin would probably be a bit more likely. But I think at the very least, the picture isn't any clearer, but it's a little bit more interesting as far as these two go and as far as the potential surrounding opponents for both of them go. Because, Saunders looked a bit better than he has recently. Got a pretty clear-cut decision win over a clear-cut victory over Willie Monroe. He looked a lot better. He looked like he'll be a lot more difficult than I otherwise, and I think most people otherwise would have anticipated against both Canelo and Golovkin. I think he's a very difficult fight for both. So I'm more interested in seeing him against either of them than I had been before.
And Superfly, me and Chemo secretly suspect you were in the building, but you didn't want to see us. So, were you?
No, man. If I was there, trust me, I would have hollered at you. I would have let you know way in advance, or even if it was last minute, I would have hit you up on Skype or whatever. But no, it was a great card, man. Fantastic card. I mean, the show stealer, as I kind of predicted it would be, was Estrada versus Cuadras. Another fight of the year candidate. Like, to me, I think that is the fight of the year. That was just a fantastic fight between those two. Cuadras kind of getting a leg up early on, with the speed and the athleticism, the agility, kind of doing almost like what I had kind of predicted he might do, almost kind of doing a Bradley versus Marquez, although Estrada is better than either of the Marquezes at cutting off the ring. And he was able to kind of summarily do that as it got into the middle and then to the later rounds. He was able to kind of make his timing show improve. And interestingly enough, even though Cuadras has been known to have a fantastic gas tank, fantastic stamina and endurance, Estrada was able to kind of tire him out, I think, simply because of the mental exhaustion that he was able to put upon him. By way of the fact that he constantly had solutions to the problems that Cuadras would give him. And, Cuadras would start changing it up, start switching stances, start throwing punches from different angles, changing the trajectory on him, changing the speed and the power on him. But consistently, Estrada was able to find the answers for him. And it was just a great fight, man, just because the two of them were constantly changing their look, changing their level against each other. And Estrada was able to pull off that knockdown late in the fight and then pull off the victory. It was really funny seeing. I think Michael Buffer screwing up the announcement just added to the entire scene of the fight, and it was great, man. It was a great fight between those two. Inoue did a fantastic job against Antonio Nieves. Didn't quite have a willing opponent in there. Nieves was being very negative, trying to, I guess, survive as long as he could.
Did give Inoue a bit of difficulty with the jab, as I thought he might. But Inoue, overall he was just kind of slapping him around, was just a level above, was just a bit too good and too much power. And, summarily he kind of smacked him around. Eventually Nieves' corner threw in the towel. And what's in wait for Inoue, not entirely sure. It's looking like he may either fight Ankaz, as I mentioned before, in Japan, or HBO, what they're looking to try to do is get, and I'll get to Srisaket in just a second, get Srisaket defending his title, WBC title, against the mandatory now, Juan Francisco Estrada, with Inoue against Brian Valoria on the other card. That's not really a fight I'm interested in. Valoria, even though he's still a top-level flyweight, a top-level guy that could still do some things at 112, not unlike Chocolatito, he's really not meant for a super flyweight, and I think he really gets hurt in there against Inoue. I mean, he has a puncher's chance because he's a huge puncher, is every bit one of the biggest punchers that's ever been seen at flyweight or super flyweight or light flyweight back when he used to fight there. But Inoue is just too good. He's just too good, and unless Valoria is able to land that money shot, Inoue is going to do some real damage to him.
Do you think
possibly end him?
Do you think the two fights you just mentioned would be on this air-quoted Superfly 2 card that is rumoured to be under construction?
Well, it seems like HBO's preferred opponent, or at least the opponent that they wanted for Inoue, if he was going to be on the second Superfly card, was going to be Valoria. If Inoue decides to fight in Japan on New Year's instead, it's looking like the most likely opponent would be Ankaz. So I'm not sure if they might be able to get Ankaz versus Inoue on Superfly 2, which would be fantastic. I think that's really the fight that should be happening. I mean, two, top 3, top 5 level super flyweights facing off against each other, along with Srisaket and Estrada. Another couple of the top 5. That's the crazy thing about it, is really the difference between like number 1 and number 5 at super flyweight right now. There's very, very little difference in terms of the gap between them in terms of quality. Technical skill is a bit here and there, but like just the level of quality, like just the level of ability that these guys are at is, roughly the same. And you can mix and match these guys any which way, and you're gonna get a varying level of fight between them, depending on how you match them up. But real quick, Srisaket versus Chocolatito. Srisaket went in there and he did the damn thing against the old man. Chocolatito, it looks like he might. These wars have finally truly caught up with him. He was having a bit of success in the second and third round. It seemed like once he got his hands moving, he was able to kind of, I guess, put Srisaket back into that scary place that he had seen in that first fight, where Srisaket thought like, oh shit, like, no, he's starting to get back into the fight like he did before. But Srisaket kind of bit down on his mouthpiece the way that a true champion should, and he said, "Nah, fuck that. I'm gonna take the play right back away from him." And he just went in there throwing went bombs away with him, bomb for bomb with Gonzalez, and it worked out for him. And got the knockout, brutal, vicious knockout over him, and proved that the first fight it wasn't a fluke. Even though I thought Gonzalez won the fight, it proved that Srisaket is still very much a high-level fighter, a high-level puncher, one of the higher-level guys in the division as well as in the sport. And as for Gonzalez, it might be the end, if not the beginning of the end, but he hasn't announced his retirement. There's rumors that he may be fighting Cal Yafai next for Yafai's the WBA super flyweight title. And, that's still a very interesting fight because, in spite of the fact that Gonzalez has definitely looked a lot more worn, recently, and even in spite of the fact that he's really not a true super flyweight, even though we're seeing him well past his prime, we're seeing him in what might be like, I guess the Marco Huck twilight of his career, truly. I do still think that he has enough in the tank that he could beat most of the rest of the opposition. But, that remains to be seen. And if Yafai is able to do a number on him, then that just props Yafai up further in terms of name value. And it's at the very least an opportunity for Gonzalez to, I guess, get some heat back to him and, potentially maybe win a title and retire as a champion should he defeat Yafai. But as for Srisaket, it's looking like, his ceiling just got a whole lot higher. He probably pulled off one of the biggest, if not the biggest, victories for a Thai boxer in history. Right up there with I'm trying to. Oh man, why am I blanking on this man's name now? When Humberto Chiquita Gonzalez lost to, I'm looking it up right now because I can't let this name get away from me. Saman Soja Turong. Right up there with that, because Chiquita Gonzalez had just come off the big victories over Michael Carbajal and he was a pound for pound rated guy. And then Saman Sojaturong managed to go in there and knock Chiquita out, and not unlike here with what Suzuki was able to do to another Gonzalez. No relation though. But if Suzuki could pull off victories over Estrada and then Inoue after the fact, that would be huge. That'd be huge. He'd be every bit deserving of a pound for pound number one title in his own right if he was to do that. For now, I do think that he is a pound for pound guy, lower, top 10 level, because of the fact that he was able to erase Gonzalez the way that he did, not unlike the way that Antonio Tarver was able to kind of erase Roy Jones in somewhat of a similar situation. He was able to have a close fight with Jones in the first fight, although he lost it, and then he knocked him out, wiped him out in the second fight. So Shisaketa I kind of rate in a similar regard to what Tarver was able to do back in the day. So fantastic win for him. And like I said before, super flyweight, it's heating up. HBO just signed the Zana Zakianov versus what's the guy's name? Ryan Burnett. Unification fight for bantamweight. So it looks like they're pouring a little bit more money into super flyweight and bantamweight now too.
Yeah, is that tape delay?
So what?
Is that going to be a tape delay?
I'm not sure. I'd have to actually check and see what time it's going to be coming on. Which let me see if they even have it up.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere when I was looking through the ESPN thingy that it's going to be HBO tape delay, because I think they have something else on the same night. Is it the one in Fresno? I think the one in Fresno's on the same night, so I think they're going to tape delay it and show it before that.
Yeah, most likely then. Because which fight is in Fresno?
I'm just trying to find now. 2 secs. I was looking through the Belfast. No, sorry, not Fresno. Is it the Corrales fight? The Jezreel Corrales fighting Alberto Machado? That's in.
Okay,
that's
yeah,
Verona,
right.
sorry, that's
yeah,
Verona.
that would make sense then.
Yep, and then it says HBO same day tape delay for the Ryan Burnett Zachariah fight. So yeah, it's good that they picked it up at least though.
Yeah, it's a good fight. Good fight between those two. I think I might favor Burnett in the fight. I think Zakianov can be outboxed. He's a big puncher though, and he's a very aggressive fighter. If he gets on the inside against Burnett, it could be Zakianov's night. But I think Burnett might be just a little bit too classy, may be able to stay away just long enough to get him the edge in more of the rounds. And supposedly, I guess Burnett, he's talking about like he broke Zakianov in sparring. I'd seen that headline. So let's see if that carries over into the fight.
Yeah, I think that was a couple of years ago as well. But I guess also this HBO tie-up with the Matchroom has helped this fight get onto their tape delay as well, because they're doing deals now. But just quickly, you mentioned Cal. Cal's on the undercard of Pulev versus AJ. Do you think he has an easy time with his opponent?
No,
Ishida?
actually. No. Actually, I think Ishida can give him a pretty difficult fight, because Yafai, he tends to be a lot more of like it seems like he has the most advantage kind of at range. I think a guy that kind of crowds him, like Suguru Maranaka did, gives him a lot of trouble. And the thing about Ishida is he's actually very good at distance and on the inside. He's really good at shortening up his punches, and he's a very tall guy. He's 5'8" and change, and he's got very long arms. So I think Yafai is pretty much always going to be in range to be hit by Ishida. So I think Ishida will give him a tougher fight than expected, but I still favor Yafai to win the fight. I think it'll be kind of a tough one that he kind of guts out, but he'll wind up winning by wider margins than really what is actually happening in the ring.
Nice. All right. Anything else you want to talk about before we just talk about a few other bits of news and then just preview next week?
Yeah, just real quick. Nico Hernandez managed to get a win over kind of a last-minute late replacement opponent. Interestingly enough, fighting all the way up at super bantamweight, really, when Hernandez should be a flyweight. But I think that it was largely because of the fact that they got the opponent on such late notice, because he was originally supposed to be fighting somebody else. So he probably just rehydrated it ahead of time, instead of bothering to have to make 112 for an opponent that didn't even make 122. The guy made 124 and a half. So late replacement opponent, pretty much smacking around a bigger guy, albeit a less talented guy. And good job for him. I think he'll be one of the guys, like I've said before, that will be able to kind of take advantage of the increased attention on the later weight classes. So props to him. And then I guess Muhammad Wasim, the WBC mandatory contender,
my boy,
at some point in the near future. Yeah, your boy, man. He fought this past weekend, but I haven't even been able to find the results. It's not even up on BoxRec yet. I'm assuming that he won because I haven't seen any headlines saying that he lost. So he probably won, and hopefully he'll be able to get that shot against either Daigo Higa or Thomas Masson, depending on who wins that fight. That's actually a pretty difficult fight for Higa because Masson is a guy that normally fights a little bit higher in weight, a guy from out of France. Kind of a rangy, lanky guy. But I mean, Higa is a physical force, a physical dynamo. And so it's very, very hard to imagine anybody defeating him.
Anything else, Naoto?
Oh, well, they mentioned it in the chat. Nonito Donaire, fighting a guy that was really a clear level below him. But, he definitely looks like he's a bit faded. He is with Ringstar now, with Richard Schaefer's promotion on Ringstar. He was on the undercard against Kudryashov or on the undercard along with Kudryashov and Dorticos. And, I think he's kind of ripe for the name picking, basically. Toss him in there against Santa Cruz or Gary Russell, and they're going to get the name, the big name value on their record. But honestly, I don't think he's competitive at that highest level. Maybe we could get that Abner Mars fight that was supposed to happen all these years ago and never did. Or perhaps maybe get him in there against Jesus Rojas and get Rojas another big name on his record. He has Arce on there way back in the day, so maybe he could add Donaire to it.
Yeah, it's a shame the UK feed of Saturday night's WBSS fight between Doricos and Kudryashov. They only shown the Keith Tapia Latif Cody fight. They didn't actually show the Donaire fight, and I've not looked for it. I'm sure someone's posted it somewhere, but until he fights anyone decent, even though Nonito's my boy, has no interest of him fighting someone below him.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, you can kind of see that, he's like I guess the somewhat one-dimensionality of him. With regard to his power and just trying to set up that big hook, that big counter hook in particular, along with the fact that he's kind of faded his reflexes a bit, and also he doesn't throw as many jabs or set it up quite as much as he even used to. Ultimately against guys that are just kind of subpar, really kind of fringe of the fringe contender level, can give him some trouble like this guy, Ruben Hernandez did. And, the guys at the top will, comprehensively defeat him.
Anything else?
No, I think that's going to do it for that. I'm trying to kind of go back in my mental, notes about, anything else that may have happened, but I think, pretty much, juiced it to as much as I could.
Yeah. A few things I wanted to just get your opinion on. Obviously, the passing of Jake LaMotta, Andre Ward retiring, and also you mentioned it today to me about Bivol and this card in Monte Carlo, which has the rematch between Solis and McDonnell, which I'm happy is getting made because I thought Solis was badly robbed in that first fight. And just your thoughts on Jack vacating. Yeah, just everything. Start wherever you want to.
All right. Well, I'll start with Andre Ward. I guess, props to him for retiring on top. I'd imagine that, I said it in jest before, but I think that there's a lot of weight and truth holding to it, that he saw what happened to Roman Gonzalez against the southpaw power puncher in Srisaket, and he didn't want that to happen to him against Adonis Stevenson, which is, I think, exactly what would have happened to him against Adonis Stevenson. So I guess he made the intelligent decision in terms of being able to kind of keep his pride about him. But it's unfortunate because I think he left a lot on the table. That fight was still there for him. There was still another man out there calling himself the champion in your division. You should have been able to try to clean that up. Not unlike the way that you somewhat did at super middleweight, although I guess Frach kind of helped him in that regard with finishing off Bude, or taking out Bude out of the contention. So I mean, good career, but there was something left lacking there. I feel like, especially if you compare him to some of the fellow pound for pound number ones of recent history. If you compare him to Gonzalez, if you compare him to Mayweather, you compare him to Roy Jones and Hopkins, and going all the way back to Trinidad and Mosley and Whitaker and Chavez, and even all the way back to Tyson and such. Guys that really they fought they fought the absolute best of the best, constantly, consistently, and didn't leave any question marks as to whether they could beat or would lose to certain opponents. Even though Mosley and Trinidad's times as a pound for pound number one or potentially or possible number one were very brief, they put it on the line. Mosley put it on the line against Forrest and got taken out, and Trinidad put it on the line against Hopkins and got taken out. Unfortunately, Ward didn't necessarily quite do that. He kind of ascended, but he never had that moment that where you thought, like, oh, what if he could lose this fight against Stevenson? I guess he kind of had that against Kovalev, especially in the first fight, but he kind of lost a bit of ground there. So it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see him prove people like myself wrong with regards to Stevenson. But moving on from there. Of course, that leaves the WBA situation vacant. So you think that Badou Jack would become the new super champion, but no, he vacated as well, like you said. So now Dimitri Bivol is apparently the WBA champion. Funny enough, it's kind of a strange situation of circumstances, and it kind of just shows you how much the WBA has kind of bastardized the term champion. A lot of people, they want to talk all this shit about like, oh, there's too many sanctioning belts, and oh, why is the WBO rated? Well, why the fuck is the WBA rated so highly? Just because it's the historically oldest belt? Fuck out of here with that nonsense, man. The WBA has bastardized the term champion way more than any other sanctioning body in recent history. And even when they've said that they're trying to unify their own belts, they can't even fucking do that shit correctly. It took a bunch of guys vacating for them to do their job for them.
But you've kind of jumped the gun though, because he's not actually the champion yet. He has to fight Trent Broadhurst, whoever that is, to become the champ.
Oh, there you go. Shit,
it's
Trent
crazy.
Fucking Broadhurst, man. It's a dangerous opponent. He better watch out for Trent Broadhurst. I don't know. I've never heard of Trent Broadhurst before, so I'm not going to completely denigrate the guy.
Yeah, but he's Australian. I looked at his record. He's not fought the highest level of position, and it's on this Monte Carlo card that I'm talking about, the one with McDonald versus Solis. So it's really weird. Hearn's calling it the Monaco Bonanza or some shit. But overall, if you look at Scott Quigg, I don't know the guy he's fighting. Chisora, he's fighting an undefeated guy, 16-0. But the last Monaco card Hearn had was not that good, man. It was pretty poor. So we'll see.
Right. We'll see. I'm sure Bivol will come through in flying colors, though. It seems like Jack primarily was holding that belt because he wanted a shot at Ward as well, and I think that's a fight that was very winnable for him as well. I had said that especially after Jack's kind of recent victories and what should have been victories, as well as Ward kind of struggling with Kovalev in that first fight especially. And Jack's body work, so we're definitely one of the best body punchers, mixing it up to the body and the head, I think, in the entire sport in a major way. But hey, let's see what Jack does. I guess maybe he'll be going after Adonis Stevenson, what I think is a very interesting fight. I think he could outbox Stevenson, but at any given time, Stevenson could land that bomb and take out Jack. It's a very, very dangerous moment. But going off of what you kind of mentioned as well, Solis and McDonald, I think Solis is going to get that title that he rightly deserved in the first fight and piece up McDonald. I think McDonald is a bit weight drained actually at 118, and so that might have helped Solis in the first fight, and it'll help him again in the second fight. So I think Solis should be able to come away with the title victory that he deserved the first time around. And then Stuart Hall versus Paul Butler is a pretty good fight. I think Hall beats Butler. I don't think Butler's been quite the same as they mentioned in the chat since Tete destroyed him. And I think that Hall actually looks pretty good against Lee Haskins, arguably won that fight. So I think that Hall will be able to kind of physically defeat Butler in that fight. And then I think I might have missed something. Was there
I'll just R.I.P. to the Raging Bull, I guess.
Oh, yeah, Jake LaMotta, man. Legend, guy that had a movie made about him, legendary fights, legendary rivalries, and rest in peace to the man. One of the premier action fighters of his era, and it's good to see now that we're getting some more of these high level action fights. Best fighting the best guys in this year. So I guess it may be fitting for his passing to have come in a year where the sport that he plied his trade in is starting to finally live back up to the gravitas that he kind of put out there.
No, I definitely agree to that. And those fights were with Robinson were amazing. I said yesterday on the show we did that it was 21 days between the second and the third Robinson fight. Like, that's now, like, medical suspensions are longer than that, and these guys were just beasts, man. It was a full-time job to them. People fight twice a year, twice a year now, even once a year, and they complain that they're fighting too much. And these guys were fighting almost like once a month, every 3 weeks, man, just to put food on the table. It's pretty amazing, man. But rest in peace. I'm pretty ready for preview. I know you kind of just did it with Hall Butler. You kind of skipped the cue, but my quick opinion on that fight, I had Butler nicking the first fight against Hall. I think Hall's too old now, man. I saw him in that 6th rounder he had recently. Yeah, he pushed Haskins, but I think the way to beat Haskins is to kind of pressure him and wear him down. But Butler's style is very different. He's kind of in and out. He'll start from that. For a small guy, normally you think a small guy will want to sit in the pocket, but he's the opposite. He wants to start from the outside. He steps in, does his work, and steps back out again. And I think, he's not going to keep up this time. I think Butler showed him respect because he was stepping up. He saw a title opportunity and he went for it, and then he vacated and stepped back down straight afterwards. And I think he's kind of grown into the weight. Him kind of changing trainers, I don't think it's going to be that beneficial. Gallagher, I don't feel he can really add much to what he's got already naturally. So I don't know if that's going to be if that's going to add any difference to the fight. But him going to Hearn as well, I thought kind of Warren showing him a lot of respect, giving him a lot of opportunities. But sometimes you can only go far with a certain person. It seemed like Warren wanted to maybe take him into the direction of a rematch maybe with Tete, because it seemed like Warren's now high in Tete, and maybe Butler didn't want that. That's just me guessing, who knows. But undercard wise on that one, Naota, I think it's pretty dire. I've said it for the last year or so that Hearn's cards, never mind undercards, have been poor to say the least. But yeah, there are kind of like a few kind of British dust-ups, but yeah, overall I'm pretty disappointed with this undercard. Stalker versus Masha Dodd. Masha Dodd only gets TV time because he sells tickets. Like, he's not that good, like, let's face it. Stalker's not that good either, to be honest. Rocky Fielding versus David Brophy's okay. Brophy's only got that one loss to George Groves. He went over to Australia, picked up the Commonwealth title, I believe, against Zach Dunn earlier on in the year, but he's not got much power. I think he's only got 3 knockouts. And Tom Farrell's fighting O'Hara Davis. Again, he's only got 3 knockouts, so it's pretty kind of set up for O'Hara to get a win, get his confidence back, put him back on track. Anthony Fowler's fighting in the 6th round against Jay Byrne, and Natasha Jonas is against TBA. Derek Chisora's on there as well against TBA, so I don't know. Hearn just throws guys on undercards now, mismatches them, gets them wins, and tries to put them in bigger fights. But yeah, undercard wise, it's pretty weak for me. What else have we got, Naota? Marius Bradis versus Mike Perez, a continuation of the World Boxing Super Series, which is, again, another thing I forgot to mention earlier. We're getting these, continuous week after week, and it builds up a brand. It helps build recognition as well. So it's another thing that they're doing quite well.
Yeah, definitely. It's just unfortunate that they don't quite get as much coverage as I think they should. This is a good fight, very interesting one. Depending on how Perez looks, like I said before, if he's able to kind of bring the old Perez back, I think he has a very good shot at winning the whole thing. And I favor him to win this fight. I think he might be a little bit too quick. And, I think the power, I think it's going to carry down to cruiserweight very, very nicely. So, I expect him to get the victory. But, I expect it to be a good fight, though, too.
Yeah, I'd favor Bradis. For a long time, I was kind of always unsure about him. And I'm slightly kind of warming up to him. But I'm interested to see how Perez does that cruiser. Like, we all know that Mike Perez...
His power is a big deal, Bradis. If he does land on Perez, he can't hurt him.
Mm.
I'm pretty certain. I'm pretty certain of that.
Like, Perez had like this weird, stupid fight a couple months ago where his opponent was terrible, and it was his first kind of showing at cruising. I'm just trying to see a bit more of him. We didn't see enough of him. Like, I liked Mike Perez at heavyweight. There were times where he was a bit lazy. He would switch off a bit. I don't know if it was that or his gas tank, but I don't know if he gets caught clean by Bradis, yeah, but maybe he'll be able to outbox Bradis at times. I don't know. It's a very interesting fight to me. I can't predict how it's going to play out, to be honest. And that's the fight I like to watch, because I don't want to go into something kind of always knowing how it's going to happen. So yeah, I love these unknown fights.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's kind of a funky matchup between the two of them, so it could end up any which way.
Yep, Krzysztof Glowacki's on the undercard as well. He's fighting Leonardo Damian Brudesis, if I pronounced that correctly. But it's a shame that no one's really picked up. A channel hasn't picked up this in the US. Maybe that will change when it goes into the semis and that. But at least you guys are getting to see it. If you're interested and you can go into their website, at least there is some positive. You don't have to pick up some crappy stream.
Right.
But what else, really? Juan Ma fighting Jason Valdez in Puerto Rico. I don't know if that's still going ahead.
It's actually a pretty good fight.
Yeah.
If it does go ahead.
Yeah, all the problems they're having out there, man. It's amazing the amount of devastation that these multiple hurricanes have caused, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. All kinds of natural disasters, man. Rest in peace to the people going through that, and better luck to you guys.
Yeah. And that's all I've noticed on the schedule. You got any other fights you want to mention?
Well, tomorrow there's a PBC on Fox Sports 1 card, Lidwan Barthelemy versus Eduardo Ramirez. Pretty solid fight between two kind of super bantamweight or super bantamweight / featherweight rather prospects, both undefeated. I think it's pretty interesting. Honestly, I don't think Lidwan Barthelemy is that good. He's definitely not as good as Rancis. I think he's a lot more akin to his other brother Jan, who's often forgot about because he pretty much didn't amount to anything as a pro. He got beat down by a couple of journeymen, and then kind of summarily retired after that. Ramirez isn't necessarily like an over-the-top great fighter necessarily that I've seen so far. He's a pretty competent kind of a boxer-puncher, but I think this is a relatively even fight between those two. So I think at least it'll be a pretty interesting kind of Tuesday night knockout card. There have been some kind of hidden gems on those cards, with reasonably evenly matched fights that turn out to be pretty fun to watch. So, I definitely encourage people to check that out if they have the opportunity to. And then other than that, we pretty much ran through everything else. It's not kind of a quiet weekend, there's not too much going on until perhaps, I guess, the weekend of the 7th and then the 14th where there's a lot of fights.
Yeah. Especially, I think, Eubank versus the Turkish dude and Groves versus Cox is like back-to-back as well, 7th and 14th. So I'm really interested in those two fights. But you just mentioned a PBC card, like a Tuesday one, and to be fair, PBC have been quite consistent with those Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, sometimes Thursday cards, but for their main events, Leota, they've just fell off. Like, their main stars are only fighting once, possibly twice a year. A lot of, we talked about, what's his name, Danny Jacobs, signing with Hearn. Heyman will still be, his manager, but consistency with a lot of these Heyman fighters is been very poor, man. We don't see him often enough, and when we do see him, it's not in fights that we really want.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. A few years ago, it looked like, if you were a new pro, you should be signing with Heyman because you're going to get the money. But it seems like that, I don't know, that may be slowing up now. It's simply because of the fact that, the activity level isn't quite there for some of these guys that I think really deserve to have more fights and get built up better.
Take Spence, for example, like, coming over here, really good fight with Kell Brook, good spotlight, you're in a big stadium fight, it's pay-per-view over here, you took the belt, you stopped the guy, you made him quit, and then just we get the silence period where he should be building upon it like nothing, and there's rumours, he might be fighting Collazo, there's rumours he might not be fighting until early next year. Like, it's not good enough.
Right.
Crazy. But anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here, Naoto?
Yeah, quick mention. I almost completely overlooked it. The pro debut of Bin Liu, or Liu Bin, depending on whether you want to go last name first or first name last, from China. He was an Olympian last year. Had the biggest robbery of the Olympics when he beat the shit out of Peter Rory, and then the judges somehow robbed him. He's actually the AIBA Pro Boxing light flyweight champion, but now he's turning pro under the Association of Boxing Commission's professional rules. And this guy is somebody to look out for. It's going to be on the 29th, his pro debut in Beijing, China. He's fighting against an 8-9 fighter from Thailand, Chachayo Benjamas, a.k.a. Wanchai Nyankasa. And this guy, Ben, is somebody to look out for. Funny enough, even though this is his pro debut, it's a 10-rounder. It's for the vacant WBC Asian Boxing Council Light Flyweight Championship. And I think this guy could be something really special at 105 or 108. I guess he's going to be fighting at 108, it looks like. That's the same weight that he fought as an amateur. But this guy's really good, man. This guy, some of the hype that there was behind Zhou Shiming, this guy, I think, is somebody that actually deserves it. Really just solid technical boxing skills. He's a big puncher, good jab, works behind the jab really well, fantastic left hand. I think he's gonna be a serious problem. He's one of these guys that I think could be like a truly special fighter, not unlike the great kind of strawweights and light flyweights of yesteryear. When you talk about Chocolatito, Infinito Lopez, and Ivan Calderon, maybe might not quite reach those levels of all-time greatness, but I think he has the talent to potentially get there. Very, very good fighter from what I've seen of him. Under the AIBA rule set, he was undefeated in AIBA Pro Boxing, hence why he was the champion under their style of fighting and scoring. And I think that he has a very, very solid future as a pro. If he was able to still make 105. I'd honestly probably be willing to favor him over all of the champions there right now. When Hamanayoten, Nakatsuki, Freshmart, etc. I think that's how good this guy is. Life it's a little bit more difficult because I think the quality is a bit better. But I think within a year, he should be ready for all those guys. And I think we're going to see him move very fast because of that and because, the audience that he could potentially cultivate over in China. So looking forward to seeing how his career progresses.
So you see him getting fast-tracked?
Yeah, very much so. 10-rounder in your first fight, man. So, I think he'll be ready for a world championship fight probably within about 5.
His first fight's a 10-rounder?
Yep.
That's crazy, man. That's confidence right there.
Yeah, big time. But, like I said, he's technically had 5 pro fights already. He's undefeated in that regard. And very, very solid fighter, man. Anybody that's seen that fight with Rodri in the Olympics knows that he beat Rodri's ass. And honestly, had he not gotten robbed in that fight, I think he would have been the gold medal winner at 108. That's just how good he looked against that dude.
Yeah, you'll have to send me a link of his debut fight over the weekend then.
Yeah, for sure. If I manage to find it, I know it's a little bit trickier trying to get the fights out of China compared to Japan and the Philippines.
Yep. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Naoto, for your time. Thank you to all the people in the chat and all the people that download the show week in, week out. We'll be back next week. Peace.
You just listened to the Boxing Coalition.
Dude, man, I love boxing. I fucking love boxing.
A big shout out to the Boxing Coalition.
You're a newbie.
No, I ain't new, man.
If my fucking next door neighbour became the #1 flyweight in the world, you know what I'd do? I'd fucking walk past the cunt.
Derek, how you doing, bro?
I was physically banging, blood.
I disagree.
First time I hear the show, man, it was fucking badass.
Vamos Argentina, la concha de su madre.
I see the bomb in him.
I get home and it's like, what the fuck? Me and the kid are here. Why don't you get home and talk to us? I'm like, man, you guys don't know shit about boxing.
Kel, how does it feel to be the new IBF champion?
Feels great. Did we really dive into the black hole right off the jump?
I think he's hiding glass.
Just to play devil's advocate, you want 1 portion of crow or 2 portions of crow?
Give me 2 portions with a supersized fries and a large drink, please.
I can't stand him, what? I'm Scottish.
Cringe side? But you won't rush Anthony fucking fat ass Joshua, would you? He's not fat.
How about you tell us what you ate for your final thoughts?
My weight?
Thank you for listening to the Boxing Coalition. We are live every Monday, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. UK time, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern.